All right, these problems are solve the inequalities for the given function of x. Not really. So for basically, it asks for different. Wait, I'm reading the wrong thing. Scratch that. Not those. I read the wrong instructions. Determine the real values of x that cause the function to be 0, undefined, positive, and negative. So the only difference in what we were doing the other day is that we now have to worry about the undefined values. So 26 f of x is equal to 2x minus 7 times x plus 1 divided by x plus 5. So I'm looking for zeros, undefined, and then ultimately I'll also be looking for positive and negative intervals. So where are my zeros? And we don't even have to actually show the math. You can just tell me where they are.
X equals 7 halves. X
And
equals -1.
yep.
And x equals -5.
So that's not a 0.
That's undefined.
That's going to be where it's undefined.
Oh,
So anything that makes the bottom 0 is going to be an undefined value. So this is going to be at x equals -5. So when I set up my sign chart, I'm going to do it up here so we can see it. I've got, actually, I'm going to just rewrite the problem down here and then do it down here. Just because I should have, I don't have room to do it on the side. All right, so sign chart. When we put this up on the sign chart, I'm going to list off where it's undefined and where the zeros are. So at -5, what I do is I usually put a little line through it so that I remember that that's an undefined value, so that I get to where if I'm deciding if it's included or not. Now, not as relevant for these ones because they're equalities, but when I get to the inequalities, that way I know if I need to include it or not. And then I had 1 and 7 halves. Yep, I have it written as 1 up here. That's why. All right, so then this works the same way as when we were plugging stuff in the other day. So what number over here do we want to plug in? -6. So if I plug in -6, 2 times -6 minus 7 is going to be negative. -6 plus 1 is and -6 plus 5 is negative. So I have, this is how I set it up for these ones. The other ones were all just being multiplied, but since this one also has, as a fraction, we do it like that. So negative times negative divided by a negative is then in here, what number do we want to pick? 0 is not in this. -2. So 2 times -2 minus 7 is negative. -2 plus 1 is -2 plus 5 is. So this is. Now, Virginia, what number do I want to put in here? 0. 2 times 0 minus 7 is negative. 0 plus 1 is 0 plus 5 is. So that ends up being. And then over here, what do we want to pick?
1. No.
4.
4. So 2 times 4 plus or minus 7 is. 4 plus 1 is. 4 plus 5 is. So it is. So then up here, when we do our intervals, it's positive from -5 to -1. And remember, because these numbers are zeros and we're right now dealing with equalities, we don't include any of it because that would cause a problem. So -5 to -1 union 7 halves to infinity. And then negative from negative infinity to negative 5, union negative 1 to 7/2. All right, so equalities we're probably pretty good with. So I'm going to do the inequalities because those same process, just actually answering a certain question. So solve the inequality using a sign chart. So again, remember these, we're looking for whatever it's asking for based on the inequality given to us. So if it's negative, it's less than or equal to, and we just decide if it's including 0 or not with that, and then greater than would be positive, and so on and so forth. So 38 x squared plus 3x minus 10 divided by x squared minus 6x plus 9 is less than 0. I skipped one that I was going to do, but that's fine. If we need to see another one, I'll go back and do it when we're done. All right, so this one, it's not already factored for us, so what might I need to do? Factor. So what would the top factor into?
X plus 5 minus, yes, minus.
Yep. And then the bottom?
X minus 3, x minus 3.
Yep, so x minus 3 squared is less than 0. So what values am I looking for?
Negative, not including zeros.
Yep, negative, not 0. So, and it's not like wrong if you don't write that. I just like to write it so that I make sure I get everything that I'm looking for. All right, so I still need to list off my zeros and undefineds because obviously that's how I set up my sign chart. So zeros are where?
X equals -5 and x equals 2.
And undefined?
X equals 3.
X equals 3. So when I do my sign chart, I'm using the factored form. Not that you can't use the top, but it's way easier in factored form, obviously. So I have room to do this one over here. So I've got -5, 2, and 3. And I still space these out like pretty evenly. Obviously 2 and 3 are a lot closer together, but just so I have room to write in between them. And because I'm now dealing with inequalities, it is important to remember cross through the ones that are undefined, because that way when we get to, obviously this one we're not including, but let's say hypothetically we were, that's how we would indicate that we don't include that value still. It's 3, not -5. I apparently can't read today. That's what's happening. Anyways. All right, so what number do you want me to plug in over here? -6. So -6 plus 5. Negative. I'm not even going to put parentheses around it because it seems like a lot of work. -6 minus 2
Negative.
over -6 minus 3 squared. That squared is going to make it always.
Positive.
Okay, so just something to note. So then negative divided by positive is,
Positive.
what do you want me to pick in here? 0 plus 5 is,
Positive.
0 minus 2 is,
Negative.
denominator is
Positive.
positive. So that whole thing is
Negative.
between 2 and 3. Yeah, so 2.5 plus 5 is,
Positive.
2.5 minus 2 is,
Positive.
bottom is.
Positive.
Always looks so, like, before you put the positive on the bottom, it always looks so judgmental. It's positive. It's like. All right. What am I picking over here?
4.
4. So 4 plus 5 is.
Positive.
4 minus 2 is.
Positive.
Bottom is.
Positive.
Now you're never gonna unsee it.
No, never.
All right. So I care about where it is negative. So what interval am I on?
-5 to 2.
Including or not including?
Non.
Yep. So -5 to 2 would be the solution for this one. There's a problem in here that's just kind of weird, so I want to show you how to do it. It's same process, but it just happens to fall a little differently. So 48, it's x squared plus 4 divided by x is greater than or equal to 0. So what values do I care about with this one?
Positive including 0.
Positive including 0. So I need to initially find zeros, right? So do I have any zeros?
X equals 0.
Or anywhere that, would cause a problem. So so at x equals 0, I guess, as what I should have said is we have an undefined. So we have an undefined at x equals 0. Now, I haven't found any zeros yet, but I'm going to tell you there is going to be a 0. There's going to be a 0, singular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this whole thing by x, because what that does is that gets rid of this x on the bottom. But I still need to note that this x equals 0 exists, because obviously there's a problem there, and I can't just be like, oh, well, I changed the problem. Like, it doesn't work like that. So this is going to become x cubed plus 4 is greater than or equal to 0. So now if I solve this, I have x cubed is greater than or equal to -4. So x is greater than or equal to the cube root of -4. Now, because it's a cube root, it's not plus or minus. Now, I'm going to tell you this. That's your 0 right there. That's what would cause the problem to be 0. Okay, basically, instead of it being an inequality, we essentially made it an equality to solve it, but I just leave the sign for the sake of knowing what I'm doing. So we have a 0 at the cube root of -4, which is approximately -1.58, in case you were so inclined to want to know that. So now I use that number and 0 to find where it's going to be positive, negative, whatever. So obviously sign chart's going to look a little different this time because I don't have like stuff that's getting added together. So we're pretty much just going to have to plug in a number and just see what happens on that side of the equation, basically. So I've got -1.58 and 0. So what number should I use over here?
-2.
So -2 squared is,
4.
so positive.
Oh, positive.
So plus 4 divided by -2.
Negative.
So 4 minus 2 is,
Positive.
so this one you kind of just have to actually work it out, which is why I say use the factored form on the other problems that we did so that you don't have to worry about this, but we don't have an option with this one. What about in the middle?
-1.
-1. So -1 squared is,
Positive.
yep, positive. And then 4 divided by -1 is,
Negative.
so 1 minus 4 is
Negative.
negative, so that middle is negative. And then over here,
1.
and I can see that everything's already positive, so that one is just going to be positive. Now, my undefined is at 0, so I need to put a line through that so I don't forget. That means I'm including this other value because it's a 0, and I'm including zeros, but not the other one. Why he's calling? Why are you calling me? I'm literally teaching. What's happening? Okay, I don't know what's happening. Anyways. So, I'm at negative infinity to negative 1.58, and you can write it as the cube root of negative 4. Either way is fine. But we are including that union 0 to infinity, not including. So that's where it would be positive.
So do we not include the 0 because it's undefined? Or
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was an undefined value, so that's why we don't do that. I'm going to go back up to the problem that I skipped that I said, oh, I shouldn't have skipped that, just to show you something about it, but we won't work the whole problem, but I just want you to see something about the setup of it. It was 36, so I've got x squared minus 4 over x squared plus 4 is greater than 0. So I'm looking for what values with that one.
positive, not 0?
Positive, not 0. Now, what values of this, or what values give me a 0 of this?
Positive 4 and negative 4.
Positive 2, negative.
How about that?
Yeah. X equals 2, x equals negative 2. Okay, because this factors into x plus 2 times x minus 2 on top. Now, where is it undefined?
Nowhere.
Why?
Because on the bottom, it's a squared x term, which can only make it positive, and you're adding to it, so it can't become 0.
Correct. So people will often say, oh, well, it's also negative 2 and positive 2, because they'll be like, well, x squared equals 4, and the square root of that is negative 2 and 2, and blah, blah, blah. And then they realize quickly that that's the same numbers we had as zeros, and that doesn't work. Okay? There is no value on the bottom that will make that 0, so there are no undefined values. Okay? So when you set this one up, we would still just leave this as x squared plus 4. And when you do this to plug it into your sign chart, you're just plugging this in down here. And no matter what you plug in, the bottom is going to be positive, because anything you plug in is getting squared plus a positive. So that's always going to be positive on the bottom. So when you set up your sign chart, we would have at negative 2 and at 2. And so then everything on the bottom is going to be a positive, because there's no way for it to be anything else. And then the top is all you need to find out when you do that. So that would be how you solve that one out. And then you would just be finding the positive values, not including 0. So, because there's no undefined value, so I don't need to worry about anything with that. So, any questions about that? All right, did I actually give y'all any of the problems the other day?
3, 9.
Just 3 and 9, okay. 3, 9, 25, 33, 37, 39, and 45. So we have about 27, 28 minutes left for you to work on those. If you have questions, let me know. As far as the quiz tomorrow, I think we've been pretty much okay with everything as we've gone along the way. I don't feel like 2.5 to 2.8 has been super hard, particularly. Just make sure you look back over that stuff for the quiz tomorrow. If we need to, the first 5-10 minutes, go over any questions you have, we can. And I mean, if you are doing stuff later in the day and you have a study hall, you can come find me, or at the end of the day, I can stay after for a few minutes if y'all have a question, which I know doesn't really help Riley because she's basketball practice, but, send me a message, something like that, whatever.